Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tina Patterson. I'm the principal attorney here at Patterson Justice Council, LLC. We are headquartered here in Detroit, Michigan, and we help homeowners, property owners, and business owners to protect and preserve their assets for building a lasting legacy. And in the last video, we talked about how to create and sustain a legacy. This is part two. So last week was part one. And we talked about kind of the first pillar was, which was intention. So that means really choosing and focusing and deciding that we're going to do this. And under intention, we talked about the three sub pillars, which were obviously first making that decision by analyzing our circumstances, by imagining a better future, and by deciding, making that hard line in the sand that it will come to pass. This is what I will do. And after we decide, then we have to discipline or dedicate ourselves by abandoning our old beliefs, kind of all the things we held back when we think we couldn't believe and attain. Attaining new skills and vision, right? Attaining a new mindset, attaining a new set of beliefs so that will actually help us to create and sustain this legacy, and then applying that vision. So actually putting those new beliefs to use. So going and doing something that we hadn't done before, or maybe looking at something that we hadn't looked at before that we think is best going to serve the vision of the future that we have. And then the final sub pillar was to delegate, to share the vision with family by expressing our vision to them, awing and exciting them, making them feel the same excitement that we have for that better future, and then encouraging them, letting them know that it is possible. So that was all part of last week, the first part of the series, which was intention. Today, it gets even more exciting. We're going to be talking about the second pillar, which is action. So now that we've kind of done the thinking, we've done really the hard work first. Now it's time to go out there and do it. So actually, it's time to build. If these were the building blocks of how to create and sustain a legacy, last week was mapping out our blueprint, right? No architect, no builder builds without laying out a blueprint first, kind of having the vision in mind, not even necessarily all the technical details of it, but just having the vision in mind. So last week was our blueprint. Today is our building. We're actually going to build. So we're actually going to take in action and seeing the things that we can add onto the legacy. And then next week, we're going to be talking about, not to get ahead of ourselves, but it's going to be barriers. Now that we have this big grand building, we need to protect it. So that's a clue for next week. But for today, again, we're talking about the second piece of the building blocks on how to create and sustain a business, how to create and sustain a legacy, whether it be for family or for business. And we're going to see how that can all come into play later on too. So keep staying tuned. But today is action piece. That's the second piece, action. And again, this is our building phase. Okay, this is our construction phase, if we will. This is where we finally get to lay the brick. Last week we laid the foundation. We're laying the brick. We're adding on to it. So in our action phase, we have three pillars once again: acquiring, ascending, adjusting. So acquisition, acquiring things; ascension, building them up; adjusting, making changes along the way. So let's talk about number one. That's acquire. What do we want to acquire? What does our legacy entail? What do we need to go out there and get? Well, a few things, right? So first, assets. We have to get some stuff to put in this big, beautiful legacy we want to build. And it doesn't have to be all at one time. Okay. And we'll see that in the next steps. But let's just think about, what do I want this to have? So assets. What are things that we value in terms of just kind of physical assets for now? So we're talking about, the cash, if it's building a business, if it's getting a better job, but saving it, right? Using it to have something for the next. So we're talking about cash, whether it is just savings, whether you're talking about in policies, whether you're talking about stocks. There's so many different vehicles for that. So we won't get into the technicals of that, but just cash, right? You got to have some money to put into this legacy that we want to create for the next generation. Properties, we want to have a first home. Homes are really important. I've shared the story before about my father and how the home that our family home has been in our family for almost 60 years. And it started with my grandfather, and now there's a fourth generation. So that's a fourth generation home. And actually here in Detroit, that is very common. It's not really highlighted much, but it is very common. And, across the country, there's always a family home, right? So that kind of property, but also maybe a second property, an investment property. If we're running a very successful business, maybe we're renting now, but we want to acquire a commercial property, right? So these are the kinds of things to have in mind when we're talking about assets, things outside of ourselves that we can either use to generate income or we can use to leverage because of the value that's inside of it. Okay, which is leading us to the next sub pillar under acquisition. So our first one was assets. The second one is appraisals. So now that we have these valuable things, how much are they worth? Right? Know the value because it's only going to help you get a bigger picture of the legacy in terms of where it's starting, how big it can go, and where you want it to ultimately end up. So it's a very good idea. I tell my clients often to try to know the value of their homes, right? Know the value of what's in your retirement policies, what's in your life insurance policies. Often, they might have been policies that they've got long ago, or again, it might be a family home that they bought and it's been paid for, but they haven't gotten an appraisal in a while because it's not like they're looking to sell the house, right? But it might be a good idea to get it just so you know the value of it, so you know how much it is worth, so you can kind of better calculate your net worth and see how it all fits into the plan. So appraisals, knowing the value, knowing the fair market value, maybe knowing the estimated value, or excuse me, even the value you may want to build into it. So often I have talks with clients who are renovating, right? They're renovating a kitchen, they're renovating a basement, they're renovating a bathroom. All of that is going to add most of the time to the value of the home. And on the flip side, when I have clients who come to me with disputes about maybe contractor work or municipal work in terms of utilities, and there might be some damages, especially here in Detroit. The last couple of years, we've had bad issues with flooding, which are historic. It's never really happened before, but the infrastructure is just so aged, and a lot of the homes are so much older that it's just kind of seeping in everywhere. And so clients have had damages, maybe to their basements and things of that nature. And I'll just ask, well, has this taken away from the value of the home? How much is the home, right? What is the value? Have you gotten an appraisal? Do you know? And a lot of them haven't really thought of it in that way, right? They're just thinking about the like immediate damage of, the pipe burst, or how much did it cost to clean it out to get it repaired? But did it damage the value of the home, right? So I often have those kinds of conversations, and so that's where appraisals can really be valuable to know. And I often get, clients that do come across property that maybe they have inherited from a parent who has since passed, or there's a family home that, siblings don't really know what to do with. And so it's good to know what the value of the home is so that everybody knows kind of what their share is as well. And again, that's just a piece of money, right? Or a piece of property that's going to be a part of your legacy. That's your share. How much is it worth? So get the asset, know the value of the asset with appraisals. That's a very good kind of tip to keep in mind. And then we're still under the acquisition phase. The last part of that is advantages. So, what kind of advantages do you have right now or in the future that you can take action on to help you to build and create and sustain this legacy? So, what kind of experiences, opportunities, what is available to you that you can potentially leverage? So let's say it's just a promotion at your job or something like that, and it's going to take you from maybe 50,000 to 75,000, or from 100 to 120, whatever it is. That's just kind of adding more on to your value, right? That's adding on to maybe more cash that you can store away. Maybe that's going to be put in savings to get another property or something like that. That's an advantage you can take action on. You can take advantage of for yourself now and for your legacy. So think about it in those ways. You definitely want to take advantage of things that are right in the here and now for you. That's going to make your quality of life better, but don't leave it there. Always be future thinking about how this opportunity in front of me today can better tomorrow. The same thing goes with experiences, even if it's not necessarily like compensation tied to it. Is there an experience that you can leverage? Is there an experience that you may be interested in, or experience that can potentially help you to expose you to something greater, right, in the future? Outlooks. Put yourself in new environments. Okay, well, I'm only used to, maybe staying in like a motel. This time I think I'm going to invest and maybe stay at like a nice hotel downtown, something like that. Something that's going to give you a new perspective, that's going to go into our next pillar and kind of take you higher and have you thinking bigger while you're taking action on what it is you have now. Okay. So those are the sub pillars under our first pillar of action, which is acquisition. So when it comes to acquisition, what are you trying to acquire? Assets, appraisals, advantages. Okay. And as like I said, in the advantages part, new outlooks, because our next major pillar is ascension, moving up. Okay. So once we start acquiring these things, we don't want to just stay there. We want to keep um adding to it, right? We want to keep moving higher, moving forward, because again, it's not just what we're going to do for the here and now, but for our future. So we have to really cast a wider net when it comes to what it is that we want when creating and sustaining the legacy. So ascending, and how do you ascend? What are you looking for to move up in? Well, number one, value, right? How can you get from maybe, let's say, a 500,000 net worth to, well, I want a million? What kind of steps, going back to our first step, what can you acquire to do that? That's going to ascend you to that value. So you want to always be increasing in value. And as you, it's service, as you increase in value to other people, so will your value be increased. Okay. Vision. And I'm keep pointing to your mind because a lot of it is in your mind, not just in your eyes. So vision, ascending in vision. So once again, that's where the advantages that you want to acquire come into place, because you want to put yourself into experiences, into outlooks, into um, new exposures that are going to give you that kind of higher vision. And once you get there, that's where you're going to be thinking and kind of operating at, right? Not to say that there's anything wrong with where you are here, but you kind of can see the ladder, so to speak. And every rung of the ladder that you go higher, you can continue to go. It's like the ladder ascending into heaven, right? Almost. It's like you might not be able to see the end of it, but you know that you can always go higher. Okay. So when you're talking about ascension, absolutely you want to keep it ascending your vision. And again, not just because of you where you are here, but because the higher you go on that ladder, that's the higher the next generation can start. Okay. So you want to keep that in mind. And then last, when we're talking about ascension, we're talking about vehicles, ascending in vehicles. And when I say that, that's what I mean, really the hardcore of estate planning instruments or business succession instruments. Okay. And it's important at this particular phase because we've thought about our vision, we've done our decisions. The next step is our taking action. So we are starting actually to accumulate our assets, right? We're starting to get things into our portfolio. We're starting to maybe create business relationships over here that we can continue to add to. So we have some things in place at this point, and now it's going to be time to thinking about how can I um, move these around in ways that are going to fit me, right? So it's getting ahead of the final step that we'll talk about next week a little bit, but this is a time to really be thinking about moving those pieces into into not higher places, but into places of protection. Okay, when we're talking about a will, we're talking about a trust, and we're talking about all these hard instruments. We'll talk a lot more about that stuff next week, but just keep in mind that the kind of thinking for that, uh, it really comes more into picture at this phase, if you will, because now we're starting to see the changes and we're starting to feel it, and the need is becoming greater. Okay. So that's under ascension, value, vision, and vehicles. Now, the last piece that we're going to talk about today, our last pillar under the action building block of how to create and sustain a legacy, is adjustments. We're going to have to make adjustments along the way. Nothing is going to be perfect. No plan is ever going to be the most solid plan ever. So when it comes to making adjustments, there are going to be three main categories that we want to take into consideration. The first one is our property. So do we want to keep this home? Do we want to keep this, investment property that we have? Do we want to add on to it? All right. Are we trying to sell? Even when it comes to personal property like cars, like jewelry, books, all that stuff. Think about what it is that is going to best serve your future. Um, and do you want to add on to it? Right? You don't have to remove everything, but just make adjustments along the way. So maybe, excuse me, maybe that home has served its purpose, or maybe I don't want to be managing another investment, so I'm going to sell it, right, and convert that cash into something else. This is the time to think about it under this adjustment phase. So, first, adjustment of property. The second, and I don't mean this in a mean way, is adjustment of people. And what I mean about that is that as we grow and mature, there are going to be people that are coming in and out of our lives in various ways. So maybe it's we're getting married, we're having a child, so that's a spouse and a child that we now have to plan for, right? We make those adjustments for. Maybe it's a divorce, maybe it's a bonus child in the form of a stepchild that we're now taking in under our wing and we're adopting them. Maybe it is just we're just adopting a child. Maybe it is people at the workplace or the business. Maybe your business is acquiring a partner. These are where the adjustments are made of who's in your life, how these relationships matter to you, how they matter to the overall function of you creating and sustaining a legacy. And also, people that we want to, there's a difference between people we want to protect and people we want to protect our things. And they're not always the same. So, yes, maybe we do want to protect our spouse and our children, but maybe they're not ready to protect what we have for them yet. Because it just could be the case of like a minor child. Yes, you wanna leave them your things, but you don't want a minor to be in charge of property because 1, they're not legally able to, right? And second, they don't have the capacity to do that yet. Even if they're not a minor, maybe they're a young 19-year-old and you have, just let's say $100,000 policy and you something happens to you, do you want it to go straight to that child? At 19 years old? Like, how long is that gonna last, right? So that's what we mean when we say adjusting people. Make sure that you have the right people in place that you want to leave things to, but also the right people in place that you want to manage these things, even if they're going to be two different people. Make sure you have the best um, resources out there to make that happen. Because what you don't want is for all of your hard work to be kind of withered away. It doesn't last, to be squandered, or at the same time, to be restricted from those people. So it's gonna again be an adjustment phase. It might not be you 100% right away, but we can go along the way until we feel like we have the best in place. All right. And then finally, under adjustment, just plans. Plans generally, things happen. Again, we talked about people, right? So many different circumstances occur when it comes to people. We mentioned a few, we mentioned marriage, we mentioned birth, we mentioned divorce, we mentioned businesses, right? Maybe acquiring a business or business partner. I was at an event last weekend in downtown Detroit speaking to business owners about this very topic: business planning, succession planning, estate planning, all of these things. And I made the example of Kobe Bryant, the late great Kobe Bryant. His book is actually on this bookshelf here, The Mamba Mentality. And we were all, so many of us, just shocked, right, at the nature, the manner, and the suddenness of his death at a very young age, only 41 years old. And I made the example of him having a new baby at the time. His youngest baby was only about 6 months old at the time of his death. And we all know Kobe was a very meticulous man. He planned to a T, right? And he had that, again, that mentality, that focus. But because the baby was so young, right, even though he had a trust and everything set up in place for his wife and his other children, uh, the baby had not been added there yet. So his widow Vanessa had to petition, I believe, to court to amend the trust so that the new baby could be added in there, because obviously he wasn't trying to leave out the baby, but she was still so new that the plan hadn't been done yet. So again, that's just an adjustment of plans because things happen, unfortunately, whether it's something tragic like that or something good. A lot of times, married couples might be around for a long time and they don't even have any kind of plans in place yet. And, not to knock anybody, it's just what happens. But this is why you want to be thinking about it at this phase, because we've built up some things. This is the end of the action phase. This is the end of the second building block when it comes to how to create and sustain a legacy. And so, again, next week we'll talk about the final pillar, which is going to be protection, right? All the stuff we work so hard to do, we can't lose it. We don't want to lose it. It would just be a waste. We don't want that to happen. Okay. And the bridge between what we talked about today with action and what we'll be talking about next week with protection is a bonus pillar I have for you here under adjustments, which is to add professional guidance. Okay. It's going to be key going into the protection period of it. After we have the building in place. So let's say, again, last week we had our blueprint, we had the map, we knew what we wanted to do. Today was our action phase. We constructed the building, right? So we actually have something standing now that we did. We put time, we put money, we put energy, effort, labor, all that stuff into it. That's ours. And we have these tremendous plans for it and how it can best serve the next generation. Well, next week, we're going to be talking about how to protect this building we just built, right? Because we don't want it to just go by the wayside. We don't want it to be lost to some kind of external threats. And we don't want it to just sit there and rot either. So next week, we'll be talking about how to protect what we just built. But again, the bonus is going to be professional guidance, getting the right people in mind, what kind of people that you want on that team to help you along the way, and what to look for, what qualities to look for, uh, and how important it is to really invest in that also, because you can only go so far with what you know. And I always encourage my clients and anybody I speak to, please educate yourself on whatever it is that you're thinking about as much as possible. But don't believe that you need to be the one to do it, because it can be very overwhelming. It can be intimidating. And if it's something very technical, like a lot of legal stuff can be, then it might make you want to just not do anything at all. But often that's only going to hurt you in the long run. Okay. So professional guidance as we go into the protection phase next week. So that's our video for today. I'm going to recap again. Today was part 2 of how to create and sustain a legacy. Our first building block was with intention, what it is that we want to do. Our second building block that we talked about today was action, what it is we're going to do, the things we are doing to move into the next phase, which is going to be protection. Okay, so join me again next week, Wednesday. Oh my goodness, May. I don't even know the date yet. May 3rd, I believe it is. I can't believe we're already in May. So Wednesday, May 3rd at the same time, 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And until then, have a good week. All right. Thanks. Bye.